Hi guys, welcome back to Coding World. Today in this video, we are going to see a Java problem which is a singleton design pattern. So we are going to explain what is a singleton design pattern, what is a singleton object, and there are 4 ways to implement it in Java. Apart from that, these are the mainly commonly used ways to create the singleton design pattern. Apart from that, there are also ways also, but we will mainly focus on these 4. So let's get started. First, we will understand what is a singleton and why it is required. So singleton means that class gives guarantee that only one object of that class will be used throughout your application. That means single instance of that class will be used. And why it is required? Because some classes which have heavy operations such as a database connection, if we are using again, we are creating that object freshly again and again, that it will be a memory overload and it will be a time consuming. So in that case, we are creating those object only once and we will use all our application. That in those scenarios, we use a singleton design pattern. Now let's focus on how many ways are there to create a singleton design pattern. There are mainly 4 commonly used ways to create a singleton design pattern in a Java, and those are: 1, early initialization, then lazy initialization with synchronized block and without synchronized block, and 4th one is using Enum. We will create a simple Java program and we will demonstrate these 4 ways in detail. Okay, let's get started. This is my simple Java project, and in this I have a singleton pattern as my main class. We are going to create our first singleton pattern using a early initialization. Okay, so early singleton. What we are going to do in early initialization, we are using a private static object, and that will get initialized when this class gets loaded into our class loader. So let's create a private static early initialization instance equal to new instance, and for this method we will create a public display method, public void. This method we will use using this singleton object. Now let's create a one method which will return only our created singleton instance, public static early singleton get instance, and in this we are going to return our instance. We will create a private constructor, so no one will able to create this object from class from other package. Okay, and this is our singleton class with the first approach. Now we have to test this. Is it giving only one object or is it creating a new object whenever this get instance method call? Let's use this singleton object one equal to new singleton not new. Why it is giving error? Because we have made constructor as a private. Let's get instance. Let's create another object of this early initialization. So we will check that all these 2 objects getting same hash code. If both have a same hash code, that means these 2 objects are same. Let's test this by running our singleton class. Yeah, if you see that for these 2 objects we are getting same hash code, that means we are getting a same object whenever we are calling get instance. Now let's move to our second approach, which is using lazy initialization. Let's create one more class, lazy singleton without synchronized block. In lazy initialization, what happens? Object get initialized whenever that get instance method gets called. Okay, so first create a private constructor, so no one will able to create object of this class apart from this class. We will initialize it to the null, and it will get initialized whenever this method, whenever we call get method, get instance method, that time only it will get called. In this block, what we are going to check, if instance is equal to null, we are creating only once, and if it is not null, we are returning same instance. Let's create a display method, same like previous. I'm copy paste. Okay, now we will test this lazy initialization without a synchronized block. Let's create this a public static. Okay, let's run and test. Okay, here also we are getting a same hash code. That means we are getting a same object whenever we call a get instance of the singleton class. But what happens in a singleton, in this approach, what happens, we are using a not null check. Suppose there are 2-3 threads and which simultaneously calls this get instance. In that case, there might be a situation where simultaneously 2 threads come to the instance is equal to null, and 2 objects might get created in our application. So to avoid this, we are using a synchronized block and double check of the null. So it will gives guarantee that only one object of the your singleton class gets created. So let's implement that approach. I am going to create a class, yes, lazy singleton with synchronize. Okay, let's create a private static instance. I'm initializing it as a null because I'm going through the lazy initialization approach. Create a private constructor of the, so no one will be able to create this object, and public static get instance method. Here what I'm doing, I'm using 2 checks. First of all, I'm checking instance equal to null, then I'm using synchronized block over my instance. Again, I am checking instance equal to null, then only I am creating instance. Let me explain this in detail. So what happens when 2 threads which are using a singleton, when 2 threads simultaneously using a get instance method of our lazy initialization class, that times when first thread comes, it will check that it is null. Second thread it comes, it will equal to null, and in that case both threads trying to create a new instance of our lazy initialization. To block them, what we are doing, we are using a synchronized over instance. So only one synchronized block we are using, so only one thread will able to access the synchronized block. Now when first thread comes inside our synchronized block, it will check instance equal to null, and then it will create the singleton with a synchronized object. And when second thread comes, it will check instance equal to null, but that will be not happen because we already created a singleton object, and it will not create another object. And in the end, we are returning instance. So let's add display method for this class, and we will check. Let's create 2 objects of the same class, and check both have a same hash code. It is giving us a null pointer exception because we are using a synchronized block over our instance, and that can be a null because at the first time it will be null. So use synchronized block over class. Now let's run our main program. Yeah, it's returning us a hash code for both object as the same. That means we have added a singleton. Now let's focus on fourth approach, which is using enum. I will create a single one enum. So let's create one instance. As my enum, and for that enum let's create a public. Let's call this display method using a singleton. So in our object we will go here. As we know, enum is a final by default, so let's use enum singleton instance dot display, and it will call our singleton method. Let's run, and I'm not printing anything here. Okay, so our method is getting called, and this is the best way to create the singleton functionality. And enum, because enum by default provide the synchronization, because enum is a final and we cannot inherit that, and using this most of the codes has been written. And this is it, guys, using these 4 types design pattern. Okay, in without synchronization, what we can do, like we can make that this method also as a synchronize, so only one time will this instance get created, even it in a 2 thread or more than 2 threads. Okay, so that's it. You like this video, and please subscribe my channel for such interesting video. Thank you.